Welcome to the second talk in the series on the Cloud of Unknowing, called The Wisdom of Uncertainty, Getting into the Cloud of Unknowing. And this talk will be focusing on chapters 5 and 6, and I'll be bringing in some stuff from the later chapters. As I said in the last talk, there are actually more than 72 chapters to the Cloud of Unknowing, so these early chapters give the basic teaching, and then there's some explanations in the later chapters to clarify some things. So both for chapter 5 and 6, I'll be bringing in material from the later chapters just to clarify. So I'm going to open the screen now. So the wisdom of uncertainty, getting into the cloud of unknowing. That this time we're living through now, we don't really know how things are going to pan out in the end. And so instead of worrying about it or trying to work out everything, the wisdom of the cloud of unknowing is that we learn to be in unknowing and to trust that the future is in the providence of God. So although we may not know what's going to happen, we know that there is a way of living each day which is helping to shape the future. And the cloud of unknowing, as I explained in the last talk, shows that that way is the way of love. Love is the way we live in order to shape the future according to God's plan. Now in chapter 5, we are introduced with a new idea, which is the cloud of forgetting. We've been introduced to the idea that there's a cloud of unknowing between us and God, that we can't know God and we can't work out what God's doing through the events of, it's always mysterious. But then there's this cloud of forgetting, and this is the experience of meditation, that in prayer and meditation, we are having to let go of many other thoughts as well. So we cannot know God, but we're having to let go of other thoughts. This cloud of forgetting is between us and all other things. Sometimes it's best to imagine this like you're going up in an aeroplane, and the clouds are above your head to begin with, between us and the sky, and between us and the sun, so we can't see the sky. But then you pass through the clouds, and before you could look down and see all the fields and the houses and the cities below. But once you go through the clouds, this cloud covers all the other things. So you're no longer able to see the other things. And this happens in meditation when we let go of other thoughts. So the cloud author says, in order to be at home in the cloud of unknowing, in order to enter the cloud of unknowing, we have to take up this contemplative work of love, as I urge you to do. This is what we looked at in the last talk. But there is something else you must do, as well as this work of love, reaching out to God in love. We have to let go of other thoughts. Just as the cloud of unknowing lies above you, between you and your God, so you must fashion a cloud of forgetting beneath you, between you and every created thing. So in this diagram here, we see that we are here in the middle. And there's a cloud of unknowing above us and God. It means we can't think about God, we can't work out God. And there's a cloud of forgetting between us and what he calls all created things. Maybe, anyway, in this picture, it's really distractions, all other things. So here there's the meditator here in contemplation, and they're reaching out in love through the cloud of unknowing toward God. But they're also letting go, putting beneath the cloud of forgetting all the other thoughts. And in meditation, this is why it is difficult, because we can't think about God during the time of meditation. We let go of those thoughts, but we also can't think about other things. We're encouraged to let go of all other thoughts about what we're going to do, about the past and the future. So this little man is taking his dog for a walk. He has he's full of his thoughts about all the things he has to do, all his worries, all his bills, all his tasks, and then various distractions. Whereas the dog is in the cloud of forgetting here. He's let go of those thoughts, and he's just in the present moment with what is around him. This is a man who's sitting down to meditate, and he's rather angry with his people he works with in the office. So immediately these thoughts, which are to do with our daily life, come to us in our meditation, and so this isn't very conducive to meditation, to have thoughts of how you're going to get your own back on people who've annoyed you. So this is also part of the cloud of forgetting. We have to let go of, and it's these often the thoughts which are have an emotional quality, which are more sticky and harder to let go of. But we have to put this cloud of forgetting, let go of those, even those where we have this emotional connection to. So here he is replaced with another thought of sometimes in meditation we can go into daydreaming and thinking nice thoughts, and also those thoughts we have to let go of and put into the cloud of forgetting. So all thoughts, whether good or bad thoughts, have to be let go of. Another way of seeing this cloud of forgetting is this idea of a cloud being beneath us. In the medieval people didn't have aeroplanes, so the way they may have seen the cloud beneath them is the reflection of clouds in water. And these is just some examples of Claude Monet's water lilies, but how you see the clouds are reflected in the water. So you can no longer see what's at the bottom of the ponds because of the reflection of the clouds. It's like the cloud of unknowing beneath us. So chapter 5 talks about the cloud of unknowing, and chapter 6 he will go now into more detail on the cloud of chapter 5, the cloud of forgetting, chapter 6, the cloud of unknowing. And the cloud of unknowing is between us and God, and it comes with this question. Here you see the cartoon, the pilgrim or the explorer has gone up the mountain to talk to the wise man on the top of the mountain. And this question, what is God? And the cloud author says this is the question which puts us into the cloud of unknowing. As the wise man in this cartoon says, you've stumped me with that question. I think that's something you need to Google. The God isn't something that we can understand. We can't say what God is. It's the cloud author says, this is in chapter 6, he says, with this question, what is God, you bring me into the very darkness and cloud of unknowing that I want you to enter. we may know completely and ponder thoroughly every created thing and its works. That's science, pondering every created things and its works. And we can ponder God's works too. That's theology. Theology ponders how God works, how God relates to the world, but not God himself. We can't know completely nor ponder thoroughly God in God's self. So our thoughts about God are one thing, they're there, and God is something different. It's not quite as extreme as that, because we can know in part, but we can never know in whole. And in the meditation, we let go of what we can know in part, and we allow ourselves to enter into the unknowing. We don't know what we don't know about God. So this is in chapter 6. The Cloud author explains a little how this works. The thoughts cannot comprehend God. And so he says, I prefer to abandon all I can know and choose rather to love him whom I cannot know. So in this letting go of knowing God, we can still reach out to God, but we reach out to God with love rather than trying to understand. And that's why I think it's appropriate for this time at the moment, when our response to the situation is not so much trying to work out what's going on, because we don't know what's going to happen, but we can respond completely and fully by growing in love. So the Cloud author says, though we cannot know him, we can love him. By love, God may be touched and embraced, never by thought. Love is, so in this discussion of the relationship of the mind and the heart, which is always somewhat in conflict, here the heart really wins. It's what is able to reach God. So but then the Cloud author, and this is where the clarification of the later chapters of the Cloud text come in. There is a reconciliation between the mind and the heart. That the way to God, the heart leads, but the mind cooperates as well. So this is what we'll look at as a clarification of chapter 6, and then we'll look at a clarification of chapter 5 after. So here we are. The mind, once it recognizes that the heart is plays the leading role, starts to work alongside the heart and becomes supportive, and they become friends of each other. So they're meditating. When we meditate, we lead the mind into the heart. So we recognize that the heart is what reaches out to God, but instead of denying our thoughts, we just lead the mind into the heart, so that the mind works alongside. Another way of putting this is to think lovingly, or emotional intelligence, but really it's the capacity for our whole being to work in a loving way. So these clarifications from the later chapters, where this question, the person he's writing for, as you remember, was a young man, makes this question, how can I love something that I don't know? Normally we love things that we can know. And the Cloud author says that this is what we're encouraged to do. And it's true that in life, there's a lot of things we don't know which fully, and yet we can still love. I mean, every person we meet is a mystery to us, and yet we can still love them without ever knowing or understanding them fully. So love is not dependent on knowledge. So anyway, the Cloud author says, it is enough that you feel your desire stirred towards something that you don't know, so that in that movement of desire, you have no distinct thought of anything under God. So you're letting go of all other things in the cloud of forgetting, and that the intent of your heart is directed, as it were, nakedly to God. That's reaching out to God without trying to have thought or image. Now, this is just to show that in the later chapters of the Cloud, he does show how the mind works together with the heart. Sometimes commentators on the Cloud of Unknowing say that it's anti-intellectual, and in a sense it is, in that it says that love is the leading faculty in the human person, but it does show that the mind can work alongside and with them. And he makes this little, well, quite a few chapters on how the mind does work. And he breaks up the faculties of the human spirit into the leading faculty, which is will, choice, and then reason, which is deliberation. And these are the primary faculties which are related to the spirit. These are the faculties which reach out toward God. And then there's the secondary faculties, which are related to material things, the imagination, where we form images of things in our mind, and the feeling, that's our response to things. And all this is integrated by the comprehensive faculty, which is what the mind is. The mind integrates all these things. This is how the Cloud author understands how it works. And he says, if we don't, anyone who doesn't know how these faculties and how they function work, you can misunderstand what he's saying. And the problem with when the mind doesn't work alongside in the right way is when the opinion, that when understanding or the deliberation becomes opinion, when we have opinions about things, and those opinions form our choices. And then we start to just react to things in terms of aversion and attraction, things that agree with us and things that don't agree with us. And then this opinion and aversion and attraction, the lower faculties start to take charge, because opinion is normally based on something we have imagined, like many of these conspiracy theories about coronavirus. Sometimes we really don't know. We have some imagination or fantasy, and then that shapes our opinion. And also these aversion and attraction is shaped by our moods. So this is really how feeling becomes moods, imagination becomes fantasy, and deliberation becomes just opinion, and then we react only according to how our own personal take on things. And this is how the mind is not really working along with the heart. He then shows how the mind can work with the heart. And this is when the reason serves the will and enables us to love. And the reason then, all the other faculties, the lower faculties, work to support the higher faculties, in that imagination becomes the servant to reason, and feeling becomes the servant to love. So love is not so much based on aversion and attraction to things. Love is fundamentally a choice, and our feeling comes to support our choice, that we learn to really feel love for what we feel or choose to be. So in the meditation, we choose God, and our feeling, our heart, the emotional aspect responds to that choice. I put in that's rather complicated, so I put in a few cartoons to try and explain it. That the heart and the brain want to work together, but the heart says that the only place the brain where contemplation can happen is in the present moment. So it takes us to the present moment. The mind is always wanting to look at the ruins of the past or the plans of the future. So it's looking at the past as and trying to work out what happened in the past and all our mistakes, or it's looking under the future and what it's going to do. Whereas the heart is just trying to say, let's live in the present moment. So that's the reason why it's difficult for the mind to go into the heart. The heart, I mean, the mind is also a busybody because it's trying to work things out, sort out the past and plan for the future. It's always got to be doing something. Come along, heart, there's work to be done and I need your input. But the heart is really saying, I have no part in this, but thanks for the invite. The heart loves the brain, but is not going to get into its busyness. The other thing is that the heart tends to look at the good things. There's good things, whereas the brain tends, in its busyness, tends to focus on problems. We see the things that need mending, the things that need sorting out. And it's again with this situation of the coronavirus that the heart can see good things coming out of this. Despite all the difficulties, there's the good things of the way people are relating, the awareness of the environment and our need to protect it, and the contemplative consciousness which is being built up. So it sees the good things, whereas the mind will see only the bad things and all the problems. So they're looking in different directions. And then the mind, because it's trying to sort things out, is always trying to, here we have the book, fix it all. The mind is always trying to fix the situation or find someone to blame. Now, this means that the mind becomes rather, it wants to be in control. It sees that what the heart is doing is not very important. And every now and then the heart objects, saying, stop trying to control everything. So anyway, the heart and the mind have their difficulties, but the heart knows what to do. And the heart gradually supports the mind to try and get it to work in a better way. Here in the cartoon, the heart has bought a book so that the mind can have a book to read. The mind was starving without something to think about, so the heart brings him a nice new book. And then with the heart leading, they can go on together toward good things. That's what the heart really does, look for the good in things, and becomes the guide to the way we can see the world, and focusing on what good we can do. The brain becomes quite grateful after a while, because obviously the focusing on problems and being overactive is not pleasant. So gradually the brain starts to be grateful to a loving way, being guided by the heart. And the heart is also appreciative of the brain. So if we're able to love really well, it's because we're able to think well, we're able to make good choices. In fact, here the heart is even saying to the brain, "I'd be a disaster without you." That just sort of following our emotions or our feelings without this discernment, this deliberation, which is the faculty of the reason, means that we can get waylaid. So in the end, this is the end of the story. That the heart and the brain become best friends, and they enter into this contemplative, this capacity to be still and to be contemplative. And this is maybe one of the gifts of this moment of coronavirus crisis, is that we've been given time to have this, enter into this contemplative experience. And the heart is what leads us, but the brain has a part to play as well. So these are the clarifications in that rather complicated way the Cloud author gives at the end of the book. The clarifications which show that the entering into the cloud of unknowing is really a cooperation of mind and heart, whereby they become integrated. Now, just to the end of the talk, there's in the middle of the book, there's some clarification on the cloud of forgetting. We've been introduced to this cloud of forgetting, and it might seem that the author is saying we have to literally forget all things and not get involved in the world. And certainly the young man he was writing for was entering into a solitary life. And as I said in the first talk, this is something we can relate to at the moment, because a lot of us are having to simplify our lives and can't meet people as much as we were before. But we might think we don't really want to spend the rest of our lives in isolation. So anyway, the Cloud author deals with this in some ways by taking the story of Mary and Martha from the Gospel of Luke, where Martha is busy with her tasks, preparing food for Jesus and his disciples who come and visit, and her sister Mary, Mary of Bethany, both of them, is sitting at Jesus's feet, listening to him, and is not getting involved with all the other activities. So the Cloud author says this is Mary is put everything behind her, the cloud of forgetting, and is just reaching out to God in the cloud of unknowing. In fact, the author says she's not really listening to him, she's just loving him. This says that from the Gospel account, it would seem that Mary became oblivious of everything, both material and spiritual, so that she put everything under the cloud of forgetting and put everything, all the thought about God, she'd let go of as well. In this painting by Caravaggio, it looks as if she's just fallen asleep. But anyway. Painting by Tintoretto. In the Gospel story, Martha comes to Jesus and asks, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself?" It's interesting that she doesn't come to Mary. Mary must have been wrapped away in contemplation or something. But anyway, she gets Jesus to try and speak to Mary, to come and do some work. In this painting by Tintoretto, we see the conversation. Here's another 17th century painting where we have Martha coming in here, and she has a saucepan. She means business, and Mary is here sitting at the Lord's feet, listening to him. Martha is going to show her what for. And this here, I assume, is Lazarus, the brother of Mary and Martha, who at this stage was still alive and was preparing the food, so that Martha wasn't going to be angry with him as well. The Cloud author says that in every age, active persons have complained about contemplatives. it's easier to, and it just is a fact that the contemplative life is harder to justify. If we're busy doing things, we feel we're achieving things, and we can always say, oh, I'm whereas we don't find the contemplative life easy to justify when people complain about people doing nothing. But actually, this is why it's quite hard to take times of retreat, and the lockdown is not easy for many reasons, but one of them is we find it hard to take time away. There's an inner critic to the contemplative life within all of us. In this painting by Gentileschi, Martha's reproving her sister Mary, telling Mary off, like the active person complaining about the contemplative. Actually, in the gospel story, Martha doesn't speak directly to Mary, and this may be one of the things of the mind and the heart not working together. They don't actually speak to each other. But the Cloud author is aware that this, the need to do our tasks is important. And he says, perhaps you feel I've insulted Martha, one of God's special friends, and that Martha was serving God, and all of us have tasks to do which can't be neglected. So the Cloud author recognizes this. But she says that it's not so much the activity which is the problem. It's the important thing which connected Mary and Jesus was the love that was between them. That love is more important than everything. It's not so much what we do, it's the love in which we do things which is important. And if we find that love, then our actions can be coming from the right place, rather than just busyness or trying to sort things out or trying to mend problems. It becomes more an expression of love. So in chapter 2, he says, sweet was the love between Mary and Jesus. In this painting, medieval picture, we have Mary kneeling before Christ, where Martha, her sister, is preparing the food here. We have Martha preparing the buns. And the gospel story ends with Jesus defending Mary, really, saying Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. In the love, our work in the world is necessary and we need to do it, but it is not eternal, whereas love is eternal. We will continue loving forever, whereas our work is only temporary. And this is when people retire, when people who can't work, they are still the main activity of life, which is loving, is still possible for them. And of course, when we go to heaven, that's what we'll be doing. We'll be loving full time. In this picture by Rubens and Jan Bruegel, they collaborated. Bruegel probably did the background and Rubens the figures. We'll see that Mary, Martha, and Jesus. You have Martha in the black and white, serving, and here you have Mary, who's in the gold and blue. And you might think Mary has chosen the better dress. That's the way Rubens tries to tell the story. So we have to have this sense, and the Cloud author says that the most important thing is to grow in love, and to get to know God, who is love. And we shouldn't allow our worries to get in the way of that. whoever possesses God needs nothing else in this life. That's maybe a kind of extreme, but we need that sense that all things will be given to us that we need. We don't need to worry about them. The Gospels often talks about that, that seek first the kingdom of God and everything else will be given to you. So this contemplative practice is really just between us and God, just giving time to God and letting go of other things without neglecting them. As this cartoon shows, that it's all well and good to be a Mary, but we still have to play our part as Martha. So the mother is saying, yes, dear, I know all about the story of Mary and Martha, but you still have to help your sister with the dishes. It's important. And this integration of Mary and Martha, here we have, is the capacity to, in the same way as the mind and the heart work together in the cloud of unknowing, the active and the contemplative work together in the cloud of forgetting. We have to continue to do what we are, our work in the world and our tasks, but in a contemplative way. That's with recognizing that love is the main motivation. So in this, here we have contemplative. She's reading this is maybe a caricature. I wouldn't recommend it when you're preparing meals, but reading a holy book while you're preparing the meal. But I don't recommend it, but there is a sense that we have to keep the two together. Or this monk here, he's doing his reading while at the same time doing his gardening. It's keeping the active and the contemplative together. It doesn't mean that certain times we have to let go of our work and rest and do our meditation and things. At other times we get on with our work, so they work together. So really the integration of, one way we might see the integration of Mary and Martha is the prayer of Maranatha. Maranatha, Mary and Martha. In that in meditation we are letting go, we're resting, but also this prayer is a work. And in the next talk, the third and the last talk on the Cloud of Unknowing, I'll be looking at the Cloud's advice on prayer, using a prayer word. And the prayer word allows us to let go of things under the cloud of forgetting and reach out towards God in the cloud of unknowing. So it's something we do, but it's something we do in order to come to a place where we are just being with God in love. So there'll be a third talk where we'll focus on the prayer word, which is the last bit recommended in the Cloud of Unknowing. Just this section has introduced us to the cloud of forgetting, and where we learn to let go of our thoughts, while at the same time still continuing to do the work we need to do in the world. And the cloud of unknowing, where we learn to relate to God through love, but at the same time bring our mind into the heart so that we love wisely.